To be the energy encapsulates the belief that everyone has the potential to be a source of strength, motivation, and change for themselves and for those around them, to leave a lasting impact on the world, one community initiative, one positive interaction, one human connection at a time. To be the energy that fuels a healthier, happier, more connected world. Because after all, you don't change the world by changing the world. You change the world by inspiring the people in it. These are the stories of the people who are changing the world. Welcome to the Be the Energy podcast.
What's going on? We are back. We got a good one for you guys today. We sit down with Adan Romo of Romo Studios. Adan is a sculptor, like a legitimate sculptor. He had an opportunity to study in Italy where he learned from some absolute masters. He's got a really, really cool story that starts with his dad, who's an immigrant and a firefighter and an artist who kind of got Adan started on his path. And now Adan does a lot of public artwork and sharing his gift with the community. In fact, there's a particular project he's been working on that we talk about towards the end of the episode that's especially exciting and special for him, that his father actually started. He gets to kind of live on that legacy and to his next generation. He's just a really cool, down-to-earth, super interesting guy. I think you guys are going to get a lot out of this episode. I had a lot of fun, so let's do it.
All right, well, let's dive in a little bit. For people who don't know who you are, maybe introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about kind of your background.
So I'm Adan Romo. We're in Romo Studios right now. I've started this with my father. And it's kind of become a studio space and a bit of a museum also, right? I'm, in a back alley in downtown. And I always love opening the door for the first time to people because you go from Midtown Sacramento in an alley that, doesn't look all that great. And when you open up the doors, it's this kind of this jewel, right? Which is really cool to kind of have that surprise effect.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So I mentioned I opened this with my father. And so the story starts with my dad, right? So my dad, born and raised in Mexico, and at the age of 18, he was in the art academy in Mexico City, had just got accepted. And then because of financial reasons, they had to immigrate to the United States. So he had to kind of drop all the artistic passion and desires and that kind of future that he saw for himself. And then just kind of help his parents and his siblings immigrate to a new country and essentially, start from scratch. And so working in the fields, picking fruit, seasonal, and then made their way to Sacramento to work in the factories, Campbell Soup, and all those kinds of things where the produce was now being changed to this something else. And so it was a better job. But all that, he was always kind of sketching and drawing, and that kind of artistic light never dimmed for him. And so as he aged and married my mom and, had the 6 kids and had a little bit more time to explore some of those passions. He was a firefighter. So as a firefighter, you have 24 hours on and then 24 off or 48 off. So those windows of time gave him a chance to, go back and pick up where he left off in Mexico City. And so it was about that time where, I was probably 8, 9, right? And so I saw my dad. He didn't have a studio like this. Our kitchen table was the studio.
Love that.
Which was great because it was immediate, right? It was an immediate thing. Like he didn't disappear and go somewhere else. Like I ate lunch and he was sculpting right there. Like it was part of my my experience, my childhood, is seeing my father kind of create things and the ebb and flow of the creative process, which sometimes is great and sometimes is not so great.
Yeah.
So he would do just projects he would like to do. So then I grew up and went to Berkeley to get my art history degree.
Sweet.
And then went to Italy for part of that, my 4 years, did my junior year there. And that's when, my dad was a great storyteller. So he was always telling me about artwork in Italy. And Italy, a lot of the artwork exists in the public, in a fountain, on a street, in a church. It's not a gallery. The tradition of gallery is not an Italian, it's not an Italian tradition.
Yeah.
When you go to Paris in the 1800s, then that gallery idea. But in Italy, traditionally, art was to be public. And so I kind of grew up understanding art, not as a piece that you hang in a gallery, sell it, and then that's it. It was actually creating artwork that existed somewhere. And so that was kind of in my psyche. And so when I went my junior year to see this stuff, it went from like, literally I tell people it's kind of like if somebody had read a children's book to you, which you would have thought was fantasy, like dragons or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then you go and actually realize that there's an actually place with dragons. Like for me, my dad telling me all these artworks and then going to Italy, it was just like, oh my God, like it actually exists. And it not only exists, but there's so much more that I don't even know about. Right.
Whoa.
And so even to this day, having lived there for 3 years, it's kind of like, I still feel like I don't know it all that well.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always something more to learn, right? Which is anything you do, right? It's like when you focus on something, the beauty of it is it's a constant discovery of new layers, right? I call Italy a artistic lasagna because it's like, it's like it just never ends.
That's amazing.
So I came back to Sacramento after Berkeley and worked bussing tables, trying to figure out how I was going to balance like the practical reality of painting things and doing my art.
Yeah.
And so that's like a whole thing that artists have to figure out.
Absolutely.
All the time. So I started teaching at St. Francis High School and started to kind of run the department there and kind of organize the department. And then after a year there, I got a scholarship and what's called a Rotary ambassadorial scholarship, where they send you for a year wherever you want.
Whoa.
And they essentially pay for you to do what you love. And so I got back to Italy.
Nice.
And went to the academy in Rome, but I also spent about 6 months in a small village on the coast of Tuscany where Michelangelo sculpted marble. And there I specifically learned how to sculpt the marble. So these guys are old guys in their 80s by the time I got there. Didn't really graduate from high school. Like their whole life was sculpting marble. Sculpting. And so again, like I mentioned before, Italy is like a lasagna of art. Like this wasn't just seeing artwork now in the piazzas and in the churches. I was actually in the space where they were being created. And that was a whole other, like going back in time, right? I mean, it's just people, you literally get off the train and you hear clink, 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 clink.
Dude, that's insane.
It's just people, this whole village that's essentially sculpts marble. And so, the mountains are behind there. They always look like there's snow on them because it's just white capped marble mountain.
That's crazy. Dude, you went and learned from literally like the Jedi map. It's like,
it was definitely that feeling. It definitely that feeling, especially because, unfortunately in Italy, like with anything, people, the young generation weren't necessarily all that interested in continuing those traditions.
Right.
They want to learn computers. They wanted to, do lots of all those things that modern life has. And so me going back as a 20-year-old, it was kind of like unique for them as well to have somebody that interested in it. But it's work, man. It's no joke. It's not the romantic version of being an artist. It's like a mechanic shop. I mean, it's just you're at dust. You show up at 7:30 in the morning and you leave at 5 and your body hurts and your hands hurt and you're covered in dust and you've cut your hands 3 times in the process and there's cussing.
Yeah.
There's and then there's joking and all that other stuff. So
probably one of the more physical art forms. I mean, sculpting, like that's...
Oh, yeah. I mean, my right arm was much bigger by the end of the year than my other, just the sheer, because I was hammering with one and just holding with my left. And so I noticed that my right arm was, just, you can imagine whatever. In one day, you've, I don't know, 1,000 times, 300, if you struck the chisel.
Seriously.
Wow. So then I came back home. And what you see behind me are plaster sculptures that I bought from that studio that I was working for.
Yeah. So I guess real quick, if
if you're not watching the YouTube video version of this, or you're just listening, go find the YouTube one, because behind us is a whole bunch of just epic plaster mold of statues, and it's just super rad. So would highly recommend looking at that. But anyway, back to it.
Yeah, definitely a visual medium. So you gotta have to look at these things. So these things, with marble you can't mess up. Unlike clay, you can take. It's called what we call additive. You add and you subtract, and you're constantly with clay getting to decide how much you want or need to put back. Marble is not that. It is purely subtractive.
Right.
You're just taking it away, and there's nothing in the world that's going to allow you to put that piece back on. So the mental and physical strain, that's what's the saying? Measure twice,
cut
once. Yeah, it's more like measure, 20 times. And then before you chisel, measure one more time, and then because that's it. You can't. So because of that, traditionally an artist would create a plaster version of what they wanted to do in marble, and that would be their guide. And so it's called the point system, where you're essentially graphing with this tool that the Romans made. You're grabbing points from your plaster. It's very complicated, but essentially you're grabbing points, and then you're using that as a benchmark in your stone that allows you to determine the depth of your cut per the point on the plaster. It's actually an old way of essentially doing what laser scans do. When you laser scan something, the light bounces off of your nose and goes back, and that bounce back, depending on how far or close it is, tells the scanner the depth of your face. So the point system acts in the same way, but you're just not laser scanning. You're actually using this tool that helps you graph your face out. And so these plaster casts, if you get up really close, you will see a lot of them have pencil marks, like they broke out with hives or needles or whatever is spreading around these days. And it's literally just grabbing the points.
Wow.
But the plasters become in some ways useless. The marble is the finished product that then gets sent off to a gallery or put in a church, and the plaster then stays behind. And so I have plasters here from the 1800s, from the 1700s, of artists who went to the small town with their plaster, made the marble, left the plaster, and the marble now exists somewhere in Europe in some public space or some private collection.
Yeah.
And so when they decided to close, which is the end of my year there, I offered to buy some of these, and I created them up and sent them back to Oakland from Tuscany. And the 3 months that it took to get shipped, I came back home and tried to find a studio space to house all this, but also start my career as a sculptor. And so I found this place in Midtown that had a barn in the back of the property. And so I purchased that property, rented out the house, and started to build the space that you see here. So it's my kind of creative space, but I also like to host dinners and things like that, because it's such a unique place. It's like I said, it's a jewel where I kind of like to have people come in and enjoy it as well.
Yeah. Dude, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So from Berkeley to Italy, and then you did a year there?
Yeah, about a year, 6 months. Yeah,
Okay.
a year.
And then you came back, started teaching, got the scholarship.
Yeah, they allowed me to leave teaching for a year to go do this a year and a half, and then come back with a guarantee that I'd have my job there waiting for me. And so I got back to teaching, but also doing artwork.
Nice. You still teach?
This is my last year.
Okay.
Yeah, 26 years. So that was 26 years ago when I started.
Nice, man.
So yeah, long journey.
Yeah.
But it's also, in the tradition that I've been brought up with my father, with those craftsmen in Italy, there's this deep understanding that there's a trade, there's a craftsmanship in there, and you need to pass it on. That not all artists have to do that. Some artists just want to do their thing, and that's fine, right? But there's a tradition that I've kind of been brought up in, where the idea of passing passing things on.
Yeah.
Especially in this day and age, right? Where literally what I do goes back to the Roman times, the Renaissance times. And you would think with all the digital stuff that we have and, podcasts and all that stuff, that it still somehow is a relevant medium, right? One of those things that,
Totally.
yeah. And stone doesn't disappear, right?
That's for sure.
So
It'll last for a real long time.
the reason people choose stone because it lasts, right?
Yeah.
So that's the only thing that's been proven to last,
Yeah.
really.
Well, and it's because of people like you and the people that you've learned from with that desire to pass it down to the next generation and mentor others in that craft that it still exists, right? I mean, if you didn't have that sort of passing of the torch, like we probably wouldn't have a lot of sculpting.
Oh, yeah.
More these days of that kind of medium, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's like I mentioned before, there's so much process to sculpt in marble, right? Understanding all those little shortcuts, all those things. If you had to start from scratch, it would take you a lifetime just to understand how to cut the marble before you even created anything of value.
Right.
So the passing on of craftsmanship allows somebody in their 20s to learn a lot. So by the time they're in their 30s, they've got a pretty good understanding of how to cut, what not to do, and so forth, what marble to choose, so that you can really dedicate yourself on the conceptual side, right?
Yeah.
You always have the material struggle, but you're just going to have less of it,
Right.
Because you just know that much more.
Yeah. And I think that's like a huge thing with a lot of artists in general, is that there's two sides to that, right? Like there's the artistic side and sort of the creative idea creation, conceptual side of like, oh, I have this cool idea that would be really awesome if I could make this really unique thing that I'm thinking of. But then there's like the technical side of like the skill that's required to actually bring that idea to fruition in a physical way, right? So it's like you have to have the creative side, but then you also have to learn the technique and the skill of how to actually make that, actually create it, right?
Yeah. I mean, and that differentiates everyone's got creative ideas. I mean, I'm not going to say that my ideas are some kind of ivory tower that's
right.
Only I've got. Everyone's got them. The physical world, to get it to bend to your idea, that's when you become an artist, because you have to have enough passion in that idea and a desire to see it to get you through a lot of work, a lot of frustration. No matter how famous you are as an artist or how many years you've been doing it, you're always going to go through a process where the thing dies, I'd say, right? There's kind of a birth, death, resurrection component to it, right? And so you have the birth of the idea. Everyone loves that. Oh my God, I'm going to do this. You've heard people say, I've got this great idea. You try to do it and it dies, right? It's just like, oh God, this is harder than I thought, right? And then you like leave it in the corner of your room, whatever it is, or we've got projects we all do. And then you either have enough courage to pick it back up and write it out and get it to the other side, or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the difference, right? Same thing with body training and physical training, right? I may say I want to run a 13K, right?
Yeah.
But am I willing to do what it takes to get my body there, right? Because nobody just wakes up one day, at least I don't, and go like, I could do a 13K. Like there are a lot of steps that I need to do to get my body to be able to even to do that, right? And so I don't think it's just particular to art. Like I think people's careers are built on that concept where you've got an idea, you want to, but are you willing to push through to become a lawyer, to become a doctor, to become a trainer, to become, a weightlifter, all those things.
Yeah.
It takes that same cycle, I think.
Yeah. No, I think that's a beautiful comparison. I think that's why like art is such a good analogy for a lot of the things in life, is because you have that storyline that kind of comes from that, right? Of like, you have this idea and then you have to overcome a lot of obstacles in order for that idea to actually come to fruition. And that's the case with a lot of things,
Yeah.
Everything. I think is also why like a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not artistic. Like I'm bad at art. I'm not artistic. It's like, no, you probably just haven't put in the time that it takes to like gain the skills necessary to actually create what you want to create. It's like there's that process that's necessary.
Yeah. And it's never going to go away.
Right.
It never, that is,
No matter how good you get,
no matter,
it has to be there.
I'm a huge fan of Michelangelo's. That's probably obvious from the way I talk and where I've studied. But reading his letters that he sent to friends and family members, we still have those. He's at the height of his career, and one of the time he writes a letter to one of his friends and says, like, I'm not an artist. Like, he was just having a down day, and was like, I'm not an artist. I can't even call myself an artist because it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't, there's something that I don't have. And like for Michelangelo to say that, right? To experience that struggle, that death, that like,
yeah,
you're right. Like maybe I just don't have it. Right.
Yeah.
It kind of brings it home to like, that everyone's going to experience that, right? No one's born specially unique to not have that kind of human experience.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be, there's always going to be doubt. There's the physical bending, but there's also the emotional, psychological hurdle that you have to go over, right? Where it's just like, what am I doing here? Am I fooling myself?
Yeah.
Like, am I fooling the world? Right? Is this just BS on some level?
Dude, and that's crazy to hear, like, even people with such experience and such skill, like they still feel those same things and they still have those same doubts and they still have those same like struggles where it's like we look at those people from an outside perspective and we'll think about it's like we call other people who don't do like traditional art who are like extremely adept at their skill, like an athlete or something, like, oh, they're such an artist on the field, right? They're such an artist with that skill that they're doing because they're making it look easy from the outside, but it's because of those years and years of skill development and practice and going through the iteration of how you kind of describe it is that like birth, death, resurrection cycle, overcoming those challenges and those doubts and whatever, and continuing to move forward. And they've just done that thousands of times. So now it appears from the outside that they don't go through it anymore, but they do. And that's so cool and interesting to think about, to like hear you describe it that way. Because for me, that it makes it feel so empowering that it's like, when I come up against that, it's like, oh, this is like normal. Not only is normal, it's probably a necessary step in the process of coming up against those.
Yeah, it's not only it's only necessary, but it's valuable.
Yeah.
Right. Like I've heard musicians, I can't remember, famous musicians. You could think of Johnny Cash, whomever, and a lot of them talking about when they ask the question, like, how do you feel like right before a concert, right before you go on the stage, you're the back of the curtain, and they're like, I'm so scared. Like, I'm so scared. But I think there's value in that because you kind of rise to the occasion. You don't take it for granted.
Right.
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 You're just like, I need to center myself. I need to like pull myself in to understand it. And fear and is that adrenaline kick or something that allows you to be, aware of what you're about to do. Right. And it's kind of like when I'm lifting, right. And Mo tells me, like, take a deep breath, like, make sure my form is right. Like, if I were just to have done it, like, I would have injured myself. I wouldn't have gotten the much weight of a lift, but that, right, that centering of myself before I do it, a lot of times, again, the fear kind of, it focuses you in a way.
Totally. I think it's a totally normal human physiological response to something that is meaningful or important or something big that's about to happen. It's like, it's just a normal human response, I think. And you touched on that. It's like, there's certain things physiologically that happen, chemicals that get released in your brain or through your body that like heighten your senses and your focus and your attention and like all that stuff and just brings you into the moment. Whereas if you didn't feel any of that stuff, if you didn't go through either the frustration or the nervousness or whatever, it's like you're going to be coming into that with a little bit less of a heightened physical state. So physiologically, like, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But also just like mentally, I think you're totally right.
Yeah. And I think the added special component with art is that fear is you're accepting your humanity, right?
Yeah.
And that your artwork is a human connection, right? Like the artwork itself, whether it's a scrap of paint on a cave wall done in, the prehistoric times, or a sculpture or a movie, like the the artist in some ways has to accept their humanity for it to resonate with you.
Yeah, I've never thought about it like that before, but that's...
You know what I'm saying? I have to acknowledge my fear, my pain, all that stuff. Like, it's actually not something that I shelve and put on the side. It's actually something that I embrace because it inevitably finds its way in the finished piece, right? And when I like working with the human body, right? Like a lot of what I say with sculpting is, unlike an author or a director, I don't have 400 pages to tell my story, right? I don't have 2.5 hours in a movie to tell my story. In the sculpture, I've got one shot, and someone looks at it and has to feel it. I don't get 400 pages to then tell them, and then this is what's going on in her head, or this is right. So I need to understand, by understanding my body, your body, how emotions play and manifest, that the way I hold my hand, the way the wrist moves, the way a finger moves, the way a head tilts, all is going to resonate with everybody because everyone since birth has been looking at other bodies.
Humans doing those things. So you're conditioned to understand what things mean, what emotion.
Yeah, you may not be able to describe it with words or understand it at any artistic level, but when you're working with the human body, everyone knows. Is it sad? Is it pensive? It's all that because it's the humanity coming out in the stone.
That's amazing.
And so I need to understand the body's connection with emotion and the concept of the mind and how it manifests itself in the body as a language, right? Just like on a musical note, sometimes a note, like the Jaws theme is whatever, only
two notes, literally.
But you could be anywhere in the world and like something bad is going to happen.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know. I don't know why those two notes. I just feel it. I understand it. You don't need to explain it to me. I just know. So the same way when I sculpt, when I'm working particularly with the human body, all that has to be done in a way that resonates with you in 30 seconds.
That's incredible. And I think another reason why I think, art is such a valuable thing and to have around in society, because it's like language, like spoken language is very limited on what we can describe, like emotions, how we feel on the inside to get it on the outside. Like sometimes language just doesn't quite cut it, or it takes 400 pages, like you said.
Yeah.
But sometimes art or music or something like that evokes that same emotion in another person. So they now understand what you feel on the inside because they're feeling it on the inside. And if you can create that emotion in that person, and like you've done your job as an artist almost, right? It's like,
yeah, that's it.
That's amazing.
That's it.
Wow, that's cool.
It's the reason that they can discover a sculpture in the ground that's been there for 2,000 years and it still resonate with people. It's like, wow. Because humanity, for the most part, we're humans, right? We've been humans for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's a generational, there's something about it that, it just, you can get.
Transcends time.
It transcends time. That's the beauty of it. I tell my students some of their earliest prehistoric work is just really rocks that you can see. They've chiseled a little bit here and there and they make a figure and like I present it on a PowerPoint digital projector and we're in a dark room and we're talking about it and it's the year 2025. And then I stop and say, like, if that person, wherever they were this happens to be in modern day France, this rock that they found, that's from, I don't know what prehistoric era. If that person had decided not to sculpt that and just go like, I'm just going to toss it back, right, on the river or wherever they found it. Like that rock becomes insignificant. It's just another rock. But because someone spent time with it and care with it and chiseled it, now that rock has been pulled from the 1,000 of rocks that were on the bank of the river and now is in a vault behind glass in a museum that we are all talking about purely because some human took the idea to change a piece of rock. Like, and then you can go even deeper with it, right? On a kind of on a just, where we think what we do or what we say doesn't necessarily have an effect. But those things resonate in time, right? You don't know where these things end up, and they're all part of the communal human experience, right? So it's like, if one rock can have an effect, one word, one action, all those things could have the potential of being
Yeah. Everything we do is can have an effect, and that's, a lot of responsibility, but it's also really cool because it's like, even if you feel like you're insignificant, like, you matter,
Yeah, you totally matter. Yeah. So like, I like the concept of your life being that marble, right? Like, you have to measure, sometimes you got to measure 20 times before you act or speak, right? That in this modern time, we don't necessarily get, right? But that the idea that what you say is also part of your artistic experience as a human, what you do, maybe you should take a little more time to think about.
Be intentional about it.
Yeah. Right. And as a teacher, that's how sometimes when I talk about art, it's not just about art, right? It's about, because maybe 1% of my students will actually continue to be artists in some ways. Yeah. But if they understand it, then they understand themselves as humans a little bit more. And it's like I said earlier, it's just a reflection. The artistic process is just essentially the same thing that we do as humans on every level.
Yeah, it's a reflection of what's on the inside.
Yeah,
which is pretty sweet.
Yeah. So
I think a unique medium for that,
So that might have been too deep for
never. And people have a fast forward button. No, that's what I like about this, is just getting the juice like that, being able to go on these little tangents and get all the little gems like that. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned kind of in the beginning, like sculpting particularly, but especially in Italy where you studied, art was something that was meant to be out in the community, was meant to be a part of sort of society and, in the public.
Yeah.
Right. So I know you have done some things that are now out in the public. You can talk about that. That would be pretty cool. So what was maybe your first thing that went out in the public like that?
So, gosh, I mean, again, I had to go back to my dad. I mean, that's how early we started. And so, because my parents immigrated from Mexico, downtown was kind of where you showed up first. So the Italians were here after they immigrated, and then they started to move out of downtown as they kind of made it, and they moved towards the East Sacramento. So that's where you have Cordy Brothers. This is where you have St. Mary's Church, which is a traditional Italian church. So East Sacramento, right?
Okay.
Just when they were doing that, a lot of Mexicans were immigrating from Mexico and established themselves sometimes literally in the homes of where the Italians lived, right? And so I always say that connection between Italy and Mexico I had, like, before I was even born. Like, there was that cross-pollination of neighborhoods, the type of trees orange trees, a lot of that stuff was just still there. So all that to say is that then the Mexican community my parents were a part of, built the church on Southside Park, which is called Our Lady of Guadalupe Church. And so my father restored a big mosaic. It's got about 300,000 pieces of Our Lady of Guadalupe. You can see it. And so I must have been about 10 or 11, and so helped them with my mother on that project. And so that was the first kind of like, again, seeing my father not working in the kitchen, but now working on his sculptures and his creative stuff, as I mentioned earlier. But now in a public space where you see people passing by going like, whoa, my God, what are you doing? This was fantastic. So you get that kind of immediate response. But then, of course, when you unveil it, then it doesn't, sure, you get the pat on the back, or my dad did at least, but it becomes everyone's.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like you've now gifted something to the community that they walk away with and think of it as their own, right? So that's that's the beauty of public art. And so that was probably my first experience. When I graduated from Berkeley, I was literally in the car driving back, and my sister had cut out an article from the Sacramento-based saying there was a Jewish temple that was looking for a mosaic.
Hmm.
And they were going to pay $10,000. I had school loans, and I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. I used to set tile with my dad as a way to make money for the family. And so mosaics and tiling a bathroom or a kitchen is pretty much the same thing. So, so I submitted an idea and I got selected. So immediately after graduating from college, literally on the drive home, that first week I submitted the thing. And this was whatever, May when you graduate. By June, I was doing my first work.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it was a blessing and a curse, because it was like, wow, this is fantastic. But because I knew it was possible, then it was like, it was the carrot that was going to be a long journey. You know what I'm saying? That it was like, now I was hooked.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, this is possible.
Now this is it. This is the thing.
This is it. This is the universe telling me this is what I'm going to do. I did then within a year, I got it then another public art commission from the city of Sacramento to do the North Highlands Public Library. And so I did a couple of mosaics and a bronze sculpture there. And then there was a lot of, I keep, it used to be in the studio. I think it's now in the office in the house, a file. It just says rejections on it. And it's now full. It's completely full. The amount of rejections that I've received are probably in the thousands. What I say is you submit and you forget. So a lot of times how public art works traditionally is a city or a state or whatever will submit a call for artists. They put this call out. You submit your slides and maybe an idea of what you want to do for that concept. And then you either hear from them and say yes, or a lot of times it's thank you, but you weren't selected. And just got a lot of those, a lot.
Sure.
And sometimes you got yes, you've been narrowed down to 3. And so like, fantastic. You go present and you don't get it. Those are the ones that really hurt, because then you're touching it. You're like,
yeah, you're so close, and you're putting yourself out there.
You've worked on this idea. You're trying to like psych yourself up, and you just get rejected, right? And so it's like, I guess going down back to that whole idea of like birth, death, rejection, like the whole process. There's the process of creating artwork in and of itself. I'm going to sculpt this. This is a great idea. I try to sculpt it. It dies on the vine. God, I can't do this. And then you work through and you do it. But then that became the kind of symbol of the whole journey, right? To do public works of art, you're like, yes, I'm going to do this, and constantly going, no, thank you, but no, thank you, but no.
Dang, yeah. Dude, how frustrating is it, or like, what's it like as an artist to get to that point where it's like, I think I'm going to, try to do this work for somebody. And then you kind of come up with an idea. You have this concept, this idea that you get rejected on, and you can't even get the opportunity to bring that to fruition. Like, what's that like?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, they, most artists hate doing public art because they want to do their vision.
Yeah.
And you either take my vision or not. And public art isn't that way. It's you gotta always bend and move your concept. It's a defined box, both with the budget and the place where it goes and the community you're working with. So it's always you're kind of tiptoeing into it. But your question was about, not getting it, and then those things. Yeah, they remain fallow, or they become the like, the thing that
put into the graveyard of like, good idea.
Died before buying.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time it was just like, oh God, I mean, you see I have sketches and small maquettes. Maquettes are small versions that you pitch to get the concept. Those things, I mean, at my time, I was like, God, this is never going to happen. That was a great idea. I can't believe they didn't take it. Like, that was so, like, how could anybody come up with something else? And sometimes you look at what they got, and sometimes, that is better. And sometimes it's like, no, man, mine would have been so much better. And who knows why they were selected. And you're right. So, but that stuff, now that I'm older and grayer, they're still part of your, what it did is it forced me to be creative. and then you just file those away. Like I filed all those rejections. It's still in there. And then you come up with another one and you're like, ooh, maybe I'll take that idea and I could do this. This will make it better. So they're always part of your long experience.
Yeah.
Right. It's like I see things that I'm doing now that are just like, oh yeah, this is what I wanted to do, or a portion of this is what I wanted to do in this project over here. And it just didn't happen.
Do you ever have any of those things that occur where it's like it gets rejected, but it's like you think it was such a good idea that you like kind of make it anyway? I mean, I imagine it's a lot of time and effort into something.
I mean, I was foolish. I mean, it was a foolish errand to even go down this route. Precisely because of what you're saying.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I had a huge body of artwork that was large scale.
Mm-hmm.
And then like, oh, I'm doing a public art. That's just another big work, sculpture, like all the other ones I've been doing.
I see.
I was literally drawing things on a piece of paper, making small clay pieces of them, and then with the hopes of doing them big. Because doing them big, you have to have a lot of money to do that.
Yeah.
So that I couldn't, there's no way.
That makes sense.
It's like, this financially didn't work out.
Well, I mean, I guess that's probably a pretty good lesson too of like, you have a good idea, but you I guess probably I imagine can't like marry yourself to the idea, because what if you don't get selected? Like, what if you never can make that? Then you have to be able to like let that go somehow.
Let it go. You have to let it go.
File it in your rejection cabinet and kinda...
And know that it's just, again, this is me looking back, that in some way it's still part of, I like, because I'm that creature of, since I was a child, looking at public art and how it works in the public sphere. It's kind of my Sudoku or whatever people do in the morning when they do like crossword puzzles and those things. And they're, I walk into a space and I'm redesigning it and trying to figure out where the best location for an artwork would be, and then what would that artwork would look like. That's how I navigate in the world. Yeah. I walk into your guys' spin, and I've got 100 versions of what that would look like. Not to say that it's a bad space. No matter how good of a space is, I'm always trying to figure out how to maximize its potential.
Yeah.
Right. So all that's to say is it's the way I see the world.
Yeah.
So
totally.
So those pieces that I created but didn't get selected, those ideas.
Yeah.
Tomorrow there's going to be another idea, because it's just
part of the thing.
That's just what I do.
Part of you. Yeah.
That's what I do. Yeah.
So you've worked on a particular firefighter memorial. Let's dive into that one a little bit.
Yeah. So that one, again, because of my father, as I mentioned, my dad was a firefighter and an artist. And so back in the 90s, they were talking about doing a California Firefighters Memorial that hadn't existed prior on Capitol Park grounds. And so he pitched an idea, and he was selected as the artist. Then another artist was selected. And so because there was a little bit of politics, my father was a firefighter. The committee thought maybe a firefighter couldn't take on this whole project. So another artist came in. And so my father had to work with some of his vision was kind of impeded on. But again, it's just part of that process.
Yeah.
So it was his first huge, getting a commission to do something for the state of California is, there doesn't get any bigger in terms of what, as an artist doing public works of art, like to do that and have it on Capitol grounds and to represent a community for my father. That was his community, right? He was a firefighter and a sculptor.
That's all super special.
He would take, because firefighters, obviously they live in the station for, 24 hours. They sleep and eat there. He would take the small version of the statue he was working on to the station. And so again, just like he was doing that as a child with me in our kitchen, he was now creating the maquette, the small sculpture for what was now on the firefighter grounds called Fallen Brother. He was doing it amongst his brothers and sisters in the fire department there.
Wow.
And so that was kind of the first phase of that project. That then got unveiled in just after 9/11. 2001 is, I think, when it got unveiled, 2002. And then the wall got filled up much quicker than they expected. What I mean by that is, in addition to the sculpture elements that were there, the wall of names is the most important part of the memorial. It's got all the fallen. So it dates back to the mid-1800s, San Francisco, then the earthquake, and then it goes all the way to now. And I started to realize, several years ago, that this thing was getting filled up. That this thing was now getting to the point where they're going to need to figure out how they were going to create more space for names. Unlike a war memorial, Vietnam starts and ends. There's a World War II, World War I. They began on such and such a date and ends as a date. The fallen, you can design a wall knowing how many names. Something like a firefighter memorial, it's a living memorial. So every generation has to, right? And all the amount of fires that we've had recently, right? That's means more deaths. And there's also cancers and all those various things that come with this profession.
Yeah.
And so it just so happened, again, because I walk through the world and I see things and I try to figure out how to redesign them.
Yeah.
I was redesigning the memorial in my mind, not just how to create more wall space, but how to redesign the whole memorial, because I felt it had a lot of issues that didn't resonate with the public on a very human experience, human scale. And that's as little as the paths weren't intuitive. So people were walking on the grass. And so I showed drone shots to the committee where you would see dry paths where people were just experiencing it intuitively, but the design wasn't intuitive, right? And so it just so happened that about 4 years ago, they came knocking on Romo Studios' door saying, I understand your father worked on this project. Like, we're just going around talking to people about how they worked on it, and we need to add more names. And so I asked them, well, when are you going to start asking for concepts? And they said this was July. They said sometime probably in October. They left the studio. It was the summer, July of 2022, I think, maybe. And I was like, well, I already know. I know exactly what I want. And I know exactly, because I had already planned the whole thing out. And so I drew things out, created maquettes, did a 3D rendering in SketchUp, and did a whole presentation, and called them back and I said, I have an idea. What do you be willing to look at it? And they said, sure, go follow me. We'll come into your studio. And I pitched the idea. It was quiet, and I couldn't figure out whether it was a good quiet or bad quiet.
Yeah.
And they were like, wow, like we were just looking for more wall space, and like what you just pitched was a completely redesign of the whole thing, and we totally get it, and we want to hire you to do the whole thing. So it was the first time where I got a commission, not just to do the sculpture, but to design the space.
Wow.
From the landscape, the hardscape, the materials, the whole thing was my vision, with the existing elements that were there and how they could, they could sing better. So it was one of those weird, just fate things where, the family connection with my father being a firefighter, me getting it, and then being asked to do the whole thing was just like a dream come true, like a real kind of like, what is happening, right? This is crazy.
Dude, talk about like passing the torch, right? You really was to carry that legacy on and prove that.
So, my dad was still alive when I got that. And so the first year of that project, he understood. I could explain to him what I was going to do and, how it tied into his original vision and all that kind of stuff. He was just blown away by the whole idea. Unfortunately, he passed away during that process. So it felt literally like like this whole passing of like that again, that like my father, the person who taught me, person who got me this, and so the whole monument became, it's a memorial to firefighters. My father was a firefighter. He was fortunate enough not to have passed away during that his career as a firefighter. But in many ways, the memorial is also a memorial to my dad. I mean, it was like this was my gift of all of it. So it's pretty storybook. I mean, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the whole thing. It's kind of it's just magical, magical experience that one of those things, every day I knew like there's never going to be another project. There can never be another project like this because it's just so many, again, the lasagna idea.
Yes, dude.
There's so many layers to it that it's just one of those incredible things that just completely lucky, just lucky, right time, right place.
Yeah, I was meant to be
and then again, being rejected all those times, you get comfortable rejection. So you just, and just picking up the phone and calling them rather than waiting for the process.
Yeah.
All that because you start to get comfortable with rejection, that it's not even about that anymore because it doesn't, you get to a point where it just rolls all over you. Right. I mean, it hurts obviously, but it just doesn't, it's not just debilitating.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what those rejections mean.
Yeah.
Right. That you just built that muscle.
I got a little goosebumps on that one, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. So that one's now unveiled to the public. And, but I still have six other sculpture elements that I'll be working on for that. So it's not really going to be finished until, the next 3 or 4 years.
Cool, man. That's amazing. So what's next? What's next for you? Where do you want this to go? While I'm having the works? Like,
I mean, part of it is, just, spending more time doing my artwork, no more teaching.
Right.
I've given my time to the next generation in whatever way that means to them. I mean, there'll always be a teaching component. It just won't exist in this kind of formulaic, institution. And getting a bigger space, working on ideas, and doing more public artwork, but also doing a lot of the stuff that's been rattling in my head, So now having the resources, the time to do it, which is essentially every artist's idea, every artist's dream was to have the time. I mean, I call myself a time entrepreneur, right? It's just like, it's never really been about the money. It's just, God, can I just have the time? Money with sculpture is very important because you can't just buy canvas and paints. And, right. There's so many things that go into it. There's so many teams. There's so many other people. It's like an architect, an architect can design things, but to build them, you need a whole team. And so because I've worked with so many teams in the public, from construction workers to cement guys, to bronze foundries, to marble quarries, like I've created a web of relationships that I'm going to tap to create what I want to create before this whole thing ends.
Nice, man. That's amazing. All right, moving on. Good. Well, one last question for you then.
Oh, wow.
Right. This is kind of one that we ask everybody here is, this is, the Be the Energy podcast, and that's kind of the mantra. But it's like, what does that mean to you? Like, what does be the energy? What does being the energy mean to you? And like, how can you like live that out? And how can that be an example to other people to live out being the energy?
Wow, God. I mean, I think I've touched on it on some levels here, but, just on its simple answer is, creating these works of art for the public sphere, whether it be for the city of Folsom, for the Johnny Cash Trail or the Firefighters Memorial, that things that are in my head and that I have to struggle to create are very personal on one side, right? They're very much part of my personal journey.
Yeah.
But because of that, birth, death, resurrection, that struggle, it isn't just valuable to me. I'm realizing that journey has become powerful for a community, right? That they see themselves in the artwork that I create, and that they get inspired by the story of how I got here and how I create these artworks, and then just the artwork existing in that space, right? So going back to that story about somebody in the prehistoric times taking a piece of stone and transforming that, and then having it now being projected in a classroom or in a university here with a digital projector, I'm trying to create something that's very human, that's very much been part of the human experience, carry on that tradition, but understanding that it's going to resonate beyond me in many ways, in ways that I don't even understand. I haven't fully wrapped my head around it, right? I mean, the beauty about public artwork is that you put it out there and you have no idea. You just don't understand. It's too much for me to understand what it means to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right. And so with the firefighters, obviously there's families that after I unveiled it, they obviously have their whole new, they have their own way of experiencing it and telling me what that is that I may not have even understood completely. The Capitol Park, right? One of the things that I did with that project was not just elevate it for firefighters, but also elevate the aesthetics of Capitol Park.
Mm-hmm.
And now I hear that the Capitol Park wants to start to make renovations to elevate the park. I didn't think that was going to even necessarily happen. I like the idea of making it look better, or would I say like with the state of California, like our monuments should reflect that. Like it should feel like you're going to Washington, D.C. And I think we achieved that with the California Firefighter Memorial. And I think it's resonating in ways that I don't even understand.
Yeah.
Quite. And so be the energy, there's something definitive about that question. Like I understand what it means to be the energy in my field, but what I'm saying is it's nebulous that I can be the energy for myself, but I'm becoming completely aware that energy is going beyond me in ways that I don't even understand and don't think I ever will understand, right? For my family, for my children, for my community, for firefighters, for the state of California, like it's this ripple effect that
You don't even know how far it goes.
I don't know how far it goes. It's been part of a very personal journey that now at the age of 50 seems to feel like it's ripened and it's going, you're looking back as when you turn 50 and going like, whoa, how did I get here? Like if somebody were to ask me, like, what was the roadmap? Like, I don't even know. And that same kind of sentiment is like looking in the future and with the work that I do, like, I don't even know. I just know that being the best that I can be and what I do in the here and now is somehow generating some kind of energy that I don't even completely understand. And that's okay.
That's amazing. You're being the best version of yourself and you're using your story and your life to create this positive ripple effect of impact into the community that you don't even know how far that goes. And that, man, you are the energy, Adan. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it just has to have faith in that. We always want to know A, B, C, D,
right.
E, and it doesn't work that way. Like, you just got to be able to like lift what you can lift today, right? And be present today. And like all those little decisions, all those things somehow are going to affect things that you just don't even, you'll never completely be able to wrap your head around. So it's totally exciting. And that to me, I find exciting.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, there's no more questioning. There's no more doubt. There's just like, this feels good. This feels right. And we're going to see where this goes.
Send it.
Yeah.
I love it. Dude, yeah. That was dope. That was amazing. Well, thanks. But thanks for sitting down. Thanks for having this conversation, man. And that was super inspiring.
My pleasure. I'm so glad you came in and had this chat. It really helps me kind of to stop and, I don't get a lot of times to kind of stop and think and bounce these things off of other people. So I appreciate it. Taking the time to come in and visit.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Likewise, man. Thank you.